Okay. Hello, friends and friends. Let's talk airplanes today. Let's talk about airplanes. Let's step away from music today and then have a little fun with airplanes. Last time we talked about the forces, the aerodynamic forces that act on an aircraft in flight. We talked about the weight of the aircraft and the opposing force to it, which is lift, and we talked about thrust, which pushes the aircraft forward, and then we talked about drag, which is trying to pull the aircraft backward. But at the end of the day, we know that those four forces ended up getting along. They ended up cooperating because of the because of the third Newton's law, which states for every action force there's an equal opposing reaction force. So that's the reason why when the aircraft is at cruise altitude, and then at the time you can relax. You can the pilot might tell you to take your seat belts off, and you can stand up or stretch your leg out and just relax and drink your coffee. This is when all those forces, they just cancel out. They just cancel each other out, and then the aircraft is able to proceed in a straight level path. Okay, so but there are reasons that contribute to the aerodynamic behavior of those four forces on acting on the aircraft, on the airplane in flight. And some of the reasons are included in the air mass itself. We know that the air mass is composed of 75% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, and also of other types of gases, which amount only for 1%. The properties of the air have a lot to do with the behavior of the forces acting on the aircraft in flight. And the air has numerous properties, but the one that I consider the most important are its static pressure, its temperature, its density, and viscosity. And those four properties of the air have a great deal of influence on the behavior, on the aerodynamic behavior of the weight, lift, thrust, and drag. Okay, on the airplane in the air. Um, the static pressure is actually, you can we can just call it simply pressure, static pressure of the air. We can just call it the pressure of the air. What is the static pressure of the air? Excuse me. Is the weight of the air. Is the weight of the air. Excuse me. Is the weight of the air per unit area. For instance, well, at a specific level, from a specific level. For example, the weight of the air from the sea level, for example. Okay, so for instance, a column of air from the sea level, upward, okay, and acting on a cross-sectional area of 1 square foot is about 2,116 pounds. Okay, that's the standard weight. That's the standard. That's the standard weight of the column of air on a cross-sectional area of 1 square foot. So we can safely say that the static pressure from at sea level of the air is 2,116 pounds PSF. PSF, pound per square foot. And then if you translate that into inches, that will give you the standard static pressure at sea level is 14.7 psi, pound per square inch. But one thing that we need to consider is that as the aircraft gains altitude, this pressure, that sea level pressure, decreases as altitude is increased. So that means you have in this case then we're going to have the ambient pressure at the altitude where the aircraft is currently is, and then we also have the sea level static pressure. In that case, to really have somewhat an accurate measurement of the air pressure, we need to. It is more convenient to express it in terms of ratio. So you're talking about the ambient pressure, which is a decreased pressure due to increase in altitude, divided by the standard sea level pressure. So we actually have a pressure differential of the air mass. Okay, that's one of the most important properties of the air that influence the aerodynamic behavior of the flow forces acting on the aircraft in flight. Okay, the pressure, that pressure also can be measured by in terms of inches of mercury. So we know the standard a column of air which actually respond to a column of to I would say to 29.92 inches in mercury. Okay, on the mercury on the HG, indicator. Okay, so the standard in the standard pressure at sea level in inches of mercury is 29.92 inches high. Also, this same pressure can also be measured in terms of millibars. Okay, and to make matters even more confusing, it can also be measured in metric, which is actually used. The metric measurement is actually in use, throughout the world. Now, if we let's talk about the temperature, which is another property of the air which affects the behavior of the aerodynamic forces on the aircraft. First of all, let me say that. Now, before I do that, let me tell you that I told you that as altitude increases, static pressure decreases. Why? Because the air weighs less, with altitude. So there's less pressure. Okay, like for example, at 18,000 feet, the sea level static pressure is about half of that standard sea level static pressure. Okay. Back to the temperature of the air. We know that the temperature of the air temperature is commonly measured in Fahrenheit and in Celsius. We have the Fahrenheit scale and the Celsius scale. Okay, the only problem is those two scales, the Celsius and the Fahrenheit scales, they don't have absolute zero, which is the lowest temperature theoretically that can be developed. So it makes it a little difficult to do calculations. So to make it easier to do temperature calculations, those two scales, the Fahrenheit scales and the Celsius scales, they were converted into absolute scales, and then we 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 have that led to the inventions of two absolute scales. Okay, so one was created by Kelvin, the K scale, which has an absolute zero of minus 273.15 degrees C. You can actually say you can just drop the point 15 and keep the 273 degrees C. That's the K scale, Kelvin scale, which has an absolute zero of minus 273 degrees C, which is the lowest temperature that can be measured, that can be reached. At this point, there's water is just frozen at this point, and the other scale was created by the guy by the name of Rankine. The R scale is he converted the Fahrenheit scale into a Fahrenheit absolute scale with a base of 400 I think it's 459.67 degrees Fahrenheit. And then if you just round it up, you can just say, well, the base is 460 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is how the air temperature is measured. It is measured by using one of the two scales, the Kelvin scale and the Rankine scale. Those were famous physicists, that were working very hard to the advancement of physics back in the days. So that just like pressure, the static pressure decreases. The static pressure of the air decreases with an increase in altitude, and well, it is the same thing here. The air temperature also decreases in altitude until until the aircraft reaches the tropopause, where the temperature becomes a little warmer, I would say that the temperature at the tropopause, which is a layer of the atmosphere, at that point the temperature is about minus 0.697 degrees Fahrenheit. So after past that point, then the temperature is a little warmer, and then past that point is going to remain constant all the way to about maybe 82,000 plus feet in the air. And one thing I didn't talk about, I should have talked about with pressure, because you have two different values for the pressure, for the static pressure. You have the ambient pressure, and you have the standard sea level static pressure. Then maybe I mentioned that, but I don't really remember. But I'm going to mention it. I'm going to mention it again. Is that it is more convenient to use pressure ratio, to come up with an accurate measurement. So the ratio of the ambient pressure to the ratio of the standard sea level pressure, and it gives you the pressure differential of the air. I think I mentioned that before, but since I'm not sure, I restated it. And it is the same thing for temperature. You know, the temperature also decreases, just like I just told you. So it is more convenient to use temperature ratio of the air rather than the actual. Rather than the actual temperature. We use temperature ratio, which is the ratio of the absolute temperature to the sea level standard pressure. Remember, we talk about absolute temperature scales, created by Kelvin and Rankine. So we got absolute temperature, and sea level temperature, and then now we have a ratio of temperature ratio, which is the ambient absolute temperature divided by sea level temperature, which is sea level temperature is about when it comes to Fahrenheit, using the Fahrenheit scale, it's about 419 R. That means R stands for Rankine, which is about 59 degree Fahrenheit. That's the standard sea level temperature of the air according to Rankine. Okay, 59 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, and if I use the Kelvin's theory, then it's going to be the temperature, the standard temperature at sea level is 288 K. K stands for Kelvin, which is about 15 degrees C. So in that case, the temperature ratio will be absolute temperature, divided by standard sea level temperature, which is like 59 degree Fahrenheit and 59 degrees Fahrenheit and 15 degrees C. That's for me, that's the second most important properties of the air that affect the aerodynamic behavior of the forces acting on the aircraft in flight: weight, lift, drag, enforced. Okay, that's the second one. So the third one is the density of the air. The density of the air, which is actually, what is the density of the air? Of the air mass. The density of the air mass is the density of the, let me put it this way, the density of the air is its mass per cubic feet or cubic foot. So the density of the air is its mass per cubic feet or cubic foot. And just like there's a little noise going on outside, so if you can hear it, I apologize. That kind of stuff happens. That kind of stuff happen. Um, you know, when you do recordings, stuff like that. So if you hear noise, I think, what is it is about? Oh, it's a truck, messing around. Yeah. So back to the we were talking about the density. Yeah, the density of the air is its mass. Okay, per volume per cubic foot. Okay, it's its mass per volume area. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. The density of the air is its mass per volume area. So the formula is like, is density, which is actually, if you use the Greek symbol, the Greek alphabetical symbol rho. So you can say rho equals mass divided by volume, divided by unit of volume. That's the density of the air. So the density of the air has a lot, just like I mentioned before, has a lot to do with the behavior of the forces acting on the aircraft. So just like the pressure and the temperature of the air, the density of the air also decreases with increase in altitude. As the altitude increases, the density of the air decreases. Okay, so I would even say that. So that means that just like I would say that about, let's say, about maybe 36. What about 36,000 feet and plus? The density of the air is about half of what it is at sea level. Okay, and we know that that density is measured in slug per cubic feet, slug per cubic foot or cubic feet, slug. So The density of the air is the formula is rho equal mass divided by uh, volume unit, or unit of volume, which is expressed in slugs per cubic foot or cubic feet. And so just like pressure and temperature, now like I told, just say that the density of the air also decreases with increases in altitude. So so in that case we need a ratio. Okay, you need density ratio, which is the density, well, ambient density, if you want to call it that way, divided by the density of the air at sea level. Okay, so, and the third, the last one I'm going to go, the last property that affect the behavior, the aerodynamic behavior of the forces on the on the airplane in flight. It is the viscosity of the air, which is very simple. There's not to be not the viscosity of the air is not to be confused. Is not to be confused with its density. The density of the air is its mass. Okay, it's its mass over its mass is the ratio. It's its mass divided by unit of volume in cubic foot, and we know mass is expressed. The mass is measured in slug. So you got slug per cubic foot. Okay, but yeah, now I think I'm talking. I was talking about now you have to have ratio now, because you have two different values. So you have the ratio is the ambient, the density ratio is the ambient density divided by sea level density of the air. I think I repeated myself there, but it's okay. It's okay. All right, so okay, I think I lost my train of thought for a minute there, because I was talking about viscosity. Okay, let's go back. Let's go back to viscosity. I think I mentioned that viscosity is different from density. Then I went back and I went back a little too deep to density. Yes, viscosity is actually the density is the mass of the air, and the air is a fluid. It's a gas that flows. Okay, it's a mass that flows, but in the air there are molecules that are attracted to each other. So because of that, because of those molecules moving, they keep moving very they making they moving internally. Okay, in the air, in the air, which is a gas, which is a fluid. So those molecules, they're in constant motions. Okay, and then as they moving, they they are in contact with each other, with each other, because they have strong attraction to each other. So they create a force called friction in the air, because they moving very fast in the air, because they lose those molecules, but they attract each other, so they get in contact, they contact each other, and they rub against each other and create friction internally in the air. And what that does, it create resistance of the airflow. Okay, the air cannot flow as easily as it should, because of that friction force created in it. You know, that's the viscosity of the air.